So I'm going to pull up Resolve and have a little look at what we're talking about regards this red dot. So if I navigate to the window section of Resolve's GUI here, I can switch on a circular power window. And we can obviously see that Resolve pops it smack bang in the middle of the image. So I can now move this over to the guy's head, just quickly adjust the shape, doing this on my panel, but you can of course do this on the GUI. And now we go down to the tracking pane and we can click forward and we can see that that's stuck to his face across the entire length of the shot, no troubles at all. However, this won't always be the case. We'll have to intervene. Resolve might not always track everything perfectly. So let's have a look at another shot where this might be the case. Here we can see a sign in the middle of the shot. Got some walkers around it discussing possible route they might take. So how might we use this shot to demonstrate where a track might go wrong? Let's bring up another power window, soften that off, and we'll track it to the center of the sign. And we might do this because let's say we want to maybe accentuate the sign a little bit by putting a bit of a vignette around the shot. So if I quickly go into the center of the shape here and lift the exposure, so I can then go onto the outside of that shape, which is known as an outside node that we can see here on the graph. I'll talk about this in a future tutorial. And if from the outside we drop the exposure a little bit, we've now created a subtle vignette that helps to draw the eye. But this shape obviously needs to be tracked onto the image. So if we pop down to the tracking window again, we now need to use what's known as the track forward and backward button, because we can see here that the cursor is not actually at the start of the shot. We've positioned the shape slightly into the shot from its in point. So if we click the button here, it will track forward from this point and backwards. But we can see here that it hasn't quite worked. If we scroll along to the end, it went a little bit wrong. Basically, Resolve has dropped the track. We've got someone obviously walking across the frame here, and Resolve has popped a keyframe in, and it's then kind of stopped, and it hasn't done any tracking after that. So we need to rectify this. So if we go back to where it's okay, which is here, go down to the tracking window, and select this area of the graph, we can go up to these three dots, clear the selected tracking data, and that's what it'll do. It'll get rid of anything within that portion of the graph. Now what we can do is use something that's called frame mode in Resolve, as opposed to clip. And what do I mean by that? Well, if we look here at the tracking window pane, we can see clip and frame. By default, Resolve will always stay in clip mode unless you tell it otherwise. It won't affect the movement of the shape over time unless you tell Resolve to track it. If we go into frame mode, that will then allow us to manually keyframe and manually move the shape, and Resolve will then interpolate between our keyframes the shape movement. So we can see if I flick into frame mode and say pick the window up, down in the tracking pane it's added a keyframe at that moment, which is super useful because we know at this point this is where we want the window. If we now scroll along just to the other side of the backpack, we can see here that the shape is good on the sign. So we can say on the tracking pane here, track forward, and Resolve will very nicely track the last part of the shot. So we can see here that we're good at the beginning. We've deleted the tracking data and told Resolve to forget about it. And then as the guy moves across the screen, Resolve continues the track and we're all good. And this then takes us on to the red dot. So why have we been talking all about this? In the traditional clip mode, which Resolve will stay in unless you tell it otherwise, the dot is white. When we click into frame mode, it goes red. So it's basically a visual indicator to warn you that you are now out of the automatic kind of tracking mode, and anything you do will affect that shape. So why is this all really relevant? Well, let's say you go to another shot, do a bit of a grade, and then you think, oh, actually, I need to go back to the previous shot. You do that, jump onto the panel, you've knocked the window, and Resolve has added a keyframe because you have effectively manually intervened. So let's undo that. If you were in clip mode, you move the window, it moves to that place and it stays there. It does not keyframe or transition over time. White dot, no additional keyframe information added. Red dot, anytime you touch the controls, it will add that change to the tracking data as a keyframe, and Resolve will then interpolate between the track that it had already and your keyframe. So a little bit of extra info. Your window on screen is a white outline. So maybe you would like this to be a bit more obvious. If you go up to DaVinci Resolve menu here and you go down to Preferences, over to User,
And then into color, you can see here that there is a little tick box that says high visibility power window outlines. Now, if you tick that and then you tick save, what this does is switches, as you can see on the GUI here, from the white outline to bright yellow and green, which to some people is super useful. Personally, I prefer the white because the red dot to me with a white outline is much more obvious. When I've got lots of other colors like the green and the yellow on screen, it's a bit too much for me, but it's there as an option. Have a little play and see what works for you.
So hopefully that clears up quite what this red dot's all about. Thank you for watching, and see you on the next one. All the best.